beautiful day. We have a lot to be thankful today. So, I'm going to start out in Mark chapter 16. Verse 14. Afterward he appeared unto the 11 as they sat at meat, and upbraided them for their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they believed not them which had seen him after he was risen. And he said unto them, Go ye into all the world, and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name they shall cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So then after the Lord had spoken unto them, he was received up into heaven, and sat on the right hand of God. And they went forth and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them and confirming the word with signs following. Now, the past few weeks, we've been in a tumultuous time. You know, we've seen just how crazy things can get when the ordinary way of life goes off the rails a little bit. You know, and you know, the funny thing that happens is, and the thing that we have to understand is, God's will has not changed, although the way of life, our normal way of life, has been disrupted. But you know, God's will has not changed. It stays the same. It's the same as it was yesterday. It's the same as he spoke or put the words here in this book and gave them to his disciples. So as we have seen in the past few weeks, foundation is critical. If you aren't founded in him, you'll be shaken, and you'll find out just how your strength holds up in a time of true uncertainty. So he's given his church a commission. Satan knows what that mission is. He wants to stop. He wants to stop you. You know, he wants to stop this mission. So in our state, like many others, we have a stay-at-home order currently. You know, this is due to this virus, and is for our own protection as well as those who we come in contact with. However, there has been panic like I've never seen. You know, I work in the stores, and I see this, you know, firsthand. It's not been violent, you know, in our immediate area, but I have seen accounts of this in more densely populated areas. You know, people yelling, fighting, you know, taking advantage of others on a level that I've not witnessed, you know. So we're used to seeing this, you know, once or twice a year with things like Black Friday. You know, two people making it famous on the internet for fighting over TVs or things that we want. You know, things that are not necessities, but things that we want. But these are needs that we see people fighting over. You know, we see people in these stores fighting over these things. And, you know, in the church has stepped up and has helped provide, you know, meals and essentials where they can. I heard a report that, you know, and we think of England and Europe as being almost spiritually dead, you know, because there's such a low amount of committed, you know, Christians, you know, going to church every Sunday and being, you know, with the people. But I heard an account of where these churches, because of these stores, there was so much panic buying, the stores had extra the week after. So they just donated it to all the churches, and all the churches just gave it out, you know, and so people were actually drawn to the churches because they, you know, people that didn't have any money, they were getting food for free. So, you know, it was a good thing to do, and it also, you know, got people looking. Okay, the church is giving food out for free, you know, and you know, maybe get them to come in and see what's going on there. So, you know, at this time, you know, the church has stepped up, but the church shouldn't be affected greatly by something like this. And luckily in our state we haven't had, I know some of the other states have been more strict about religious gatherings, and breaking those up. And at most we're having to change, the way that some of the larger churches worship and congregate. But this kind of thing happened in the disciples' time as well. There was a lot of underground churches. There was a lot of secret meetings, in places where the government wouldn't know they were meeting. This thing where they had to for their own livelihood, they had to meet in secret and these things, to fellowship with one another. So if we go to Acts, turn to Acts chapter 16. Verse 20. And this is directly after Paul and Silas kind of interrupted a business that they had going on, and brought them to the magistrates, saying, "These men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city, and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans." And the multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrates rent off their clothes and commanded to beat them. And when they had laid many stripes upon them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely. Who having received such a charge, thrust them into the inner prison, and made their feet fast in the stocks. And at midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them. And it's a key thing right there. They're in captivity, they're in prison, and they're still praising God. They're still singing praises to God, and the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bands were loosed. And the keeper of the prison, awaking out of his sleep and seeing the prison doors open, he drew out his sword and would have killed himself, supposing that the prisoners had fled. But Paul cried with a loud voice, saying, "Do thyself no harm, for we are all here." Then he called for a light and sprang in, and came trembling, and fell down before Paul and Silas, and brought them out, and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" So even though even though like in this situation, in this depiction of Paul and Silas's imprisonment, we saw that there was a church service going on within the walls of those cells. There was and it was just such a magnificent moment that this guard, wanted to know, how can I be saved, was turned completely and was affected. So even though some of our meeting practices have changed, for the temporary moment, God's word is still going forth using modern technology. People are able to search out services online to be a part of and join in the worship. But I've seen some of these indications where it's not all good, because I think that people can kind of be lax, if they're left to the comforts, I guess. Just a side note, I saw someone preparing for a church service, and they had their like popcorn and pizza and stuff laid out. We're getting ready for church, and I'm thinking, you kind of need to be focused more on worshiping and in the spirit, than setting up like a movie, and I think that can be a danger. We can have our focus off of where it needs to be, especially when we're supposed to be praying and worshiping. So through all of this that's going on, the same mission remains. The disciples of Christ were persecuted, thrown in jail, and killed for their steadfastness. What is this that we're going through right now compared to that? So One of the good things, and I've seen this play out in different sections of the country this past week is, in our state we are allowed to congregate. Religious services are allowed, and that's a good thing. But I have seen others where they've been broken up, and they've been banned for the most part. The larger congregations. So and I'm not saying that that's a smart thing to do, congregate in a big group, but I'm just saying that, it shouldn't be infringed. We have that right. So you start to see the wisdom of God's hand in forming our nation from its foundation in the times of trouble. We saw that our founding fathers, they had certain things that they wanted to keep sacred, and that was free speech, freedom of gathering, and so on. So the thing that I'm wanting to get to here is stress allows you to see truth, and that was kind of what this past week has shown me. If you want to know what a wall will withstand, you stress it to see the load that it can bear. If it needs to, not that it's going to, but if it needs to, how much it can bear, how much weight. If you want to know what a car will hold up, how a car will hold up in case of a wreck, you crash test it to see how those inside can manage and how certain parts can give in hopes to maintain some structure for protection. Even with something that I'm more familiar with like computers, if you want to know how well certain setups of programs and stuff the computer will handle, you run a stress test on it. It lets you need to know, if you need to upgrade a video card or processor or even the cooling system, it gives you kind of a peek of what the conditions are going to be like when there is stress applied. So, and this has been a perfect thing being in all these different stores this week and last week, and seeing how people react and how people, see certain situations and certain announcements and how it affects them. So, seeing how people are affected by this and watching their attitudes, you can kind of tell, if something were to get really bad, what people would go to. And we're told what the human heart is, So let's turn over to Isaiah, and you'll have to kind of bear with me because I'm going to read quite a bit in Isaiah. Isaiah 24. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. The land shall utterly be emptied and utterly spoiled. For the Lord hath spoken this word. The earth mourneth and fadeth away, but the world languisheth and fadeth away, and the haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The new wine mourneth, and the vine languisheth. All the merry-hearted do sigh. The mirth and tabrets ceaseth. The noise of them that rejoiceth endeth. The joy of the harp ceaseth. And they shall not drink wine with a song. Strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up, that no man may come in. There is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone, and the city is left desolation, and the gate is smitten with destruction. When thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, there shall be as the shaking of an olive tree and the gleaning grapes when the vintage is done. They shall lift up their voice, they shall sing for the majesty of the Lord, and they shall cry aloud from the sea. Wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires, even the name of the Lord God of Israel in the isle of the sea. From the uttermost part of the earth we have heard songs, even glory to the righteous. But I said, my leanness, woe unto me. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously, yea, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. Fear and the pit of the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit, and he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the fountains of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down, the earth is clean dissolved, the earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall, and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison. And after many days shall they be visited. Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. Now, at the beginning of this chapter, it's going and saying, everyone is going to be affected by this. This is a prophetic word here. Everyone's going to be affected. The priest as the servant, with his master as with the maid, so our mistress is with the buyer and the seller. And what have we seen with the effects of all this that's going on in our world today? Everyone is affected. So gone are the ones who can usually rise above this because they have money, they have fame, they have wealth. Everyone is on a level field here. So going on into chapter 25, O Lord, thou art my God, I will exalt thee, I will praise thy name, for thou hast done wonderful things, thy counsels of old are faithfulness and truth. For thou hast made a city a heap, of a defenced city a ruin, a palace of strangers to be no city, it shall never be built. Therefore shall the strong people glorify thee, and the city of the terrible nations shall fear thee. For thou hast been a strength to the poor, a strength to the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shadow from the heat when the blast of the terrible ones is as a storm against the wall. Thou shalt bring down the noise of strangers as the heat in a dry place, even the heat with the shadow of a cloud, that the branch of the terrible ones shall be brought low. And in the mountain shall the Lord of hosts make unto all the people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of wines on the lees well refined. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death in victory, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from all the earth, for the Lord hath spoken it. And it shall be said in that day, Lo, this is our God. We have waited for him, and he will save us. This is the Lord. We have waited for him, and we will be glad and rejoice in his salvation. For in this mountain shall the hand of the Lord rest, and Moab shall be trodden down, and under him even as straw is trodden down for the dunghill. And he shall spread forth his hands in the midst of them, as he that swimmeth spreadeth forth his hands to swim. And he shall bring down their pride together with the spoils of their hands. And the fortress of the high fort of thy walls shall he bring down, lay low, and bring to the ground even to dust. So like I said, the thing about this most recent virus, this pandemic as it is now, is that no one is unreachable. Everyone has been brought to the same level with this. We're used to seeing things happen to ordinary people, but usually those who have wealth or fame, they seem to be able to escape most of these type of things because they have money, they have influence, they have connections, and our idols in American culture call their home Hollywood. The whole system of this idol worship has been turned on its head. And in the past year alone, we've seen several things with connections to Hollywood be basically turned over. Still in the process of being so. You've seen the scandals with pedophilia, and now this virus has shut down all these things that make Hollywood money. That you go to the theater, they're all closed. How are they making their money on all these movies that are supposed to be released? These movies are big blockbuster. I mean, these things make a lot of money for Hollywood. You have the other things that are Disney and their theme parks, and all these things bring in money, but they're all closed down. And I heard someone making a reference to this. They said, all of our idols that we lift up today, the sports, the movies, concerts, all these things that distract have been brought down, because of this. And yet earlier you mentioned something about judgment and people not seeing this as a type of judgment. And then, I just, like you, I don't see how you can not see judgment in this. God is judging the world for its trespasses. We're seeing a clear form of judgment here. The doctors, the so-called experts, they have no clue when this is going to be over. They will stand up and they'll tell you, well, we should hit this and we should see this and we should see this, but they're not specific terms. They're not saying, this is definitely going to be ended by this date and this is when this is going to happen. We'll open this stuff back up. They're only concerned about the next few months. What about next fall? What about next year? Will this type of thing make a return? I've heard more and more people use the term, the new phrase, the new normal. I've heard that being thrown around quite a lot. But in all this, in all that's going on right now, you can feel the shaking. There is a shaking. There's a clear and present shaking, and not just spiritually. I mean, we've seen earthquakes kind of have an uptick too during this time, which they've kind of been drowned out by all the other news. So we see this shaking. We see this judgment coming upon the whole earth, and no one is escaping this. 1 Peter. And this was read last week, and I just have to read it again. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, starting in verse 9. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy, and as the Amplified says, dedicated nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in times past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king or supreme, or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men, love thy brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the forward. For this is thankworthy, if a man is conscious toward God, endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it if it, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps, who did not sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously, who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed, for ye were as sheep going astray, but are now returned unto the shepherd and bishop of your souls. So even when we are suffering, even when we are going through trials, it says, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or the governors as unto them are being sent him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. So, we're commanded to pray for our leaders, of course, but especially in times like this, you got to understand that we may be going through our own personal things. They've got the weight of a country, or of a state, or of a group of people, on their shoulders. And, I can't imagine how stressful that is. For every decision that you make could mean a life. I can't imagine having to be in that position. But that's where we come in. We have to pray. We've got to pray for our leaders. Whether we agree with this one or that one or whoever, it doesn't matter. We've got to pray. That's a command that we have to follow. And as free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants, we need to be servants in this time. This is something that's basic, to Christianity. Be a servant to your neighbor. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. This is something that should be basic for us. So that when we do that, I'll go back up to Mark here. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Let's see, where am I looking for here? So that in these times, basically, it says they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So then, after the Lord has spoken unto him, he was received up into heaven. And we read that already, but what I wanted to get at is that if you're in God's will, if you're doing the will of God, nothing's going to stand in front of you. It's basically what that is saying. He will move mountains because it's his will. If he is causing you to do something, he will move the mountains that stand in front of you. And we'll end with Matthew chapter 5. Starting in verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil things against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out, and to be trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So in times, especially like the times that we see today, the church is to be a light set on a hill. You know, we're supposed to be an example of Christ's love, not tucked away. I mean, I understand that there's, concern about large gatherings, and I understand all that, but when it comes to interactions and being neighborly, we are the example. This is Christ's love we're talking about. This is what He has given us, so that we can reflect it off to everyone else. And and that was just something that caught both of us last night. We were watching a documentary, and it was just talking about the wedding, the picture of the wedding, and how the whole work of the gospel is a picture of the wedding, in a Galilean wedding specifically, and how all the timelines and stuff match up, and it was just an amazing picture of and Lauren caught this, as we were watching it. She said the joy that the groom feels about going and retrieving his bride, and it was just an amazing thing, because he's eager. He's eager for us. This is something that he's excited about, his church. So that is the commission, go out, be light to those around us, and those who are in darkness, those who are scrambling to the store to try to find something that they can find on the shelf, and losing hope of this and that, and people that have things coming up that they've had to cancel, or it's completely changed their lives, lost their jobs. There's a lot of that. So people who are hopeless, that's the role of the church, to be that light on a hill, to show Christ's love.